What if the vegetables you've trusted for years were quietly affecting your strength, balance, and brain health after 65? Broccoli, my daily shield against aging. Broccoli has always had a seat at my table, but I never knew just how vital it would become until I turned 65. It's not just the green color or the crunch, it's what's inside that counts. This vegetable is loaded with a compound called sulforaphane, a plant chemical that doesn't just sit there looking pretty. It actively works to reduce chronic inflammation, one of the silent destroyers of mobility and mental clarity in older adults. I used to think joint pain and brain fog were just normal parts of aging. Then I started eating a cup of lightly steamed broccoli every day, and slowly I felt stronger on my feet, clearer in my thoughts. The sulforaphane helps cleanse the body, protect blood vessels, and even boost circulation to our extremities, our legs, our feet. That's critical, especially when the risk of falling becomes more real with each passing year. Broccoli also delivers a solid dose of vitamin K and calcium, two nutrients that older bones desperately need. I've seen friends struggle with hip fractures and slow healing breaks. One even tripped on a door frame and the recovery took months. Broccoli won't make us invincible, but it builds a kind of inner armor that helps us stay resilient. And that, to me, is priceless. Spinach, my secret to mental clarity and circulation. There's something magical about spinach. For most of my life, I tossed it into salads without much thought. But it wasn't until I started reading about the natural nitrates in spinach that I realized just how powerful this leafy green really is. Those nitrates improve blood flow, especially to the brain and muscles, and that's a game changer when you're trying to stay sharp and mobile past 65. I noticed it myself. After just a week of adding spinach to my morning smoothies, I felt more awake, less of that mental lag that creeps in during the afternoon. I wasn't forgetting names as often, and my legs didn't tire so quickly on walks. I later found out that spinach is also rich in lutein, which supports cognitive processing and protects the eyes from macular degeneration. It's one of the few foods that nourishes both brain and body in equal measure. If you're cooking it, don't overdo it. A quick sauté or a smoothie is all it takes. The nutrients stay intact, and your body reaps the benefits. It's such a small habit, really, but it pays off in mental clarity, physical energy, and better vision. Spinach always felt like a background player in my meals. Something green I added out of habit, not purpose. I'd toss it into a salad or layer it under a sandwich, never giving it much thought. But everything changed when I started learning about how specific foods affect aging, especially how they influence circulation and brain function. That's when spinach stepped out of the background and became a daily necessity. Turns out this leafy green isn't just healthy, it's uniquely powerful, especially for people like us who want to stay clear-headed, mobile, and energized as we get older. What really surprised me was the role of natural nitrates in spinach. These compounds help relax and widen blood vessels, improving the flow of oxygen-rich blood to areas that need it most, like the brain, the heart, and yes, our legs. For older adults, that's not a luxury. That's a lifeline. Poor circulation can make you feel cold, tired, even dizzy, but spinach helps keep that river of blood moving freely, and you can feel the difference in subtle, daily ways. The first time I noticed the effect, it was small. I didn't feel as foggy in the afternoons. I'd usually hit a wall around 2 or 3 p.m., that sluggish lull when my memory felt slow and my steps a little heavier. But after just a few days of tossing a handful of spinach into my morning smoothie, I felt sharper. I was remembering conversations better, getting through my walks without needing to rest so often. It was like someone quietly turned up the dial on my internal energy. And then came lutein, the next spinach surprise. I discovered that this antioxidant has a direct line to the brain's processing centers and plays a major role in keeping our vision intact. Seniors who consume more lutein tend to perform better on memory tests and even maintain stronger reaction times. It made me rethink how something as ordinary as a leaf could have such an extraordinary impact on cognitive health. But spinach isn't just about the mind, it's also a guardian of eyesight. As someone who's watched family members struggle with macular degeneration, I take eye health seriously. Spinach delivers both lutein and zeaxanthin, two compounds that specifically protect the retina and macula, the areas of the eye most vulnerable to aging. I started to realize that every time I put spinach on my plate, I was doing more than just eating. I was defending my independence, my ability to drive, read, and recognize the faces of people I love. Another great thing about spinach is its versatility. You don't need to cook elaborate meals to get the benefits. A quick sauté in olive oil with a little garlic? Delicious. Tossed raw into a sandwich or blended into a smoothie? Equally powerful. The nutrients are delicate, so I've learned not to overcook it. A quick wilt or blend keeps everything intact and easy to digest, especially for those of us whose stomachs can get a bit more sensitive with age. Spinach is also incredibly low in calories, but high in volume, so it fills you up without weighing you down. That's great if you're trying to manage weight or avoid post-meal fatigue. Plus, it's rich in magnesium and potassium, two minerals that support muscle function, heart rhythm, and nerve communication. You might not feel those things working behind the scenes, but you will feel the difference in how steady and energized your body becomes over time. And then there's the bonus, better hydration. Because spinach is over 90% water, it contributes to your daily fluid intake, which is a surprisingly big deal for seniors. Mild dehydration can lead to headaches, fatigue, even confusion. And spinach gently supports hydration while offering far more than just water. Since making spinach a regular part of my meals, I've stopped reaching for caffeine to get through the day. I feel naturally fueled, and I don't experience that shaky, artificial energy that coffee sometimes brings. It's a calmer, clearer kind of vitality, one that lasts longer and feels more real. I used to think healthy eating meant complicated recipes and bland flavors. Spinach reminded me that the most powerful foods are often the simplest. It's easy to store, easy to prep, and deeply rewarding once you make it part of your rhythm. Now, I can't imagine my week without it. It's become one of those quiet champions in my kitchen, the kind that doesn't boast, but delivers. Carrots, guardians of vision and balance. When I think of carrots, I think of color, crunch, and comfort. But these vibrant orange roots offer more than just taste. They offer real protection. Each one is packed with beta-carotene, which our bodies convert into vitamin A. And if you're over 65, that vitamin A is like a life preserver for your vision and balance. What surprised me is how much balance is tied to vision. Poor eyesight doesn't just mean reading glasses. It means missed steps, loss of depth perception, and higher fall risk. Since adding carrots into my daily routine, grated into salads, sliced as snacks, I've noticed fewer stumbles and steadier footing. Carrots also support neuromuscular health. That means better coordination between your brain and your body, fewer missed signals, and stronger reactions. They even help with digestion and blood sugar stability, which makes them a fantastic alternative to starchy white potatoes. Carrots have always been there in my kitchen, humble, bright, crunchy. I remember crunching on raw sticks as a kid, not realizing I was nibbling on something that would become one of my closest allies later in life. For a long time, they were just a side, a color splash on the plate. But it wasn't until I started reading about how they affect the aging body that I understood how valuable they really are, especially once you cross that 65-year mark. The power of carrots starts with beta-carotene, that signature orange pigment that turns into vitamin A in the body. I used to think vitamin A was only about eyesight, and sure, it is. But what I didn't realize is how much our balance and coordination depend on that very same eyesight. When vision begins to decline, even slightly, your depth perception changes, and suddenly a perfectly flat floor looks uneven. A missed step here, a stumble there, and just like that, your independence is at risk. Carrots help sharpen the senses that keep us upright, safe, and mobile. I started adding them into my meals more consistently, grated into a morning omelet, chopped into soups, or just sliced raw for an afternoon snack. And slowly but surely, I noticed I was walking more confidently. Fewer stumbles, less hesitation when stepping off curbs. I didn't expect such a simple habit to make such a noticeable difference, but it did, and honestly, that gave me a kind of daily reassurance I hadn't felt in a long time. But the benefits of carrots go beyond the eyes. They support neuromuscular coordination, the very system that connects your brain to your feet. That means faster reflexes, steadier steps, and better reaction times. In my own life, this translated to quicker movement when stepping sideways or catching myself if I bumped into furniture. It's not something you can always measure, but it's something you definitely feel. They're also fantastic for blood sugar stability. I used to turn to crackers or toast when I needed a quick snack, but those would spike my energy and then send me crashing. Carrots, on the other hand, have just enough natural sugar to lift you up without the crash. And thanks to their fiber content, they keep digestion smooth and blood glucose in check. For anyone managing pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes, carrots are one of the safest and most reliable options out there. I also love how versatile they are. Roast them with olive oil and thyme for dinner, toss them into a salad raw for lunch, or blend them into a smoothie for breakfast. They hold their nutrients well, whether cooked or raw, and they bring a natural sweetness that makes every dish just a bit brighter. And because they're low in calories but high in volume, they help you feel full without adding unnecessary heaviness to your plate. Another benefit I didn't see coming: skin health. Vitamin A is critical for maintaining healthy skin, and after a few months of eating carrots regularly, even my skin tone and dryness improved a bit. It's not a miracle, of course, but it's a gentle, positive shift. And at this age, every bit helps. The more I looked into it, the more I realized that carrots are one of those rare vegetables that touch almost every part of senior health: vision, balance, brain function, digestion, blood sugar, even immunity. They're all supported by this everyday root. I've come to think of carrots as more than just a vegetable. They're a kind of orange insurance policy I happily renew each day. And here's the best part: they're cheap, widely available, and don't require any fancy prep. You don't have to cook gourmet meals to get their benefits. Just slice, chew, and enjoy. In a world of supplements and powders and complex routines, carrots are refreshingly simple. But don't let their simplicity fool you. Inside every bite is a little spark of strength. And after 65, that's something I'll never take for granted again. Sweet potatoes, comfort without the crash. Sweet potatoes are my go-to comfort food now. I used to be a white potato guy. Mashed, baked, fried, you name it. But after learning what those simple carbs do to my blood sugar, I switched over. Sweet potatoes offer the same comfort, but with fewer consequences. They're high in fiber and antioxidants, which means steadier blood sugar levels, reduced inflammation, and improved digestion. I especially love that they're rich in beta-carotene like carrots, so I'm getting double the eye and immune support. And they're naturally sweet. No need for butter or brown sugar. Just roast them, maybe sprinkle a little cinnamon, and you're good to go. When I eat sweet potatoes, I feel satisfied but never sluggish. That post-meal crash I used to get with regular potatoes, gone. It's a small switch that made a huge difference in my energy and mood. Beets, the underestimated circulation booster. Beets were never a staple in my kitchen until I learned about their impact on blood pressure and circulation. The nitrates in beets act like natural vasodilators, helping your blood vessels open up and move oxygen more efficiently throughout the body. That means better brain function, stronger legs, and more stamina, all from a vegetable most people overlook. What really convinced me was how beets support walking endurance and reduce fatigue. There's real science behind it too. Studies show beet juice can improve performance in older adults during physical activity. I now roast them weekly and slice them into salads or blend them into smoothies. The taste took a bit of getting used to, but the results were worth it. I don't get winded as easily, and my legs feel stronger on walks. For anyone struggling with blood pressure, fatigue, or muscle weakness, beets are a powerhouse worth embracing. Now that we've covered the 5 vegetables I eat daily, let's talk about the ones I've learned to leave behind. Some of these may surprise you, they sure surprised me. Eggplant, a hidden threat to mobility. Eggplant has a certain elegance to it. Smooth skin, rich color, versatile in the kitchen. But under that surface hides a compound called solanine, which can quietly irritate joints and muscles, especially in aging bodies like ours. After meals with eggplant, I'd notice an odd stiffness in my knees, or a tightness in my lower back. Turns out, solanine can worsen inflammation, particularly in people who already deal with arthritis or joint sensitivity. It builds up quietly, chipping away at mobility, until one day, walking becomes a little more difficult than it used to be. No matter how you cook it, baked, grilled, or stewed, the solanine remains. And while some people may tolerate it fine, I decided the risk wasn't worth it. There are too many other vegetables that nourish without the side effects. Green bell peppers, the sneaky source of inflammation. Green bell peppers are deceiving, bright, crisp, and a staple in so many dishes, they look harmless. But they belong to the nightshade family and contain lectins, proteins that bind to the gut lining and can cause digestive and inflammatory problems in seniors. What's worse, green peppers have fewer antioxidants than their red, orange, or yellow counterparts. So not only do they come with inflammatory baggage, but they don't give much back in return. I swapped mine out for red or yellow peppers. Same crunch, better flavor, and a whole lot safer for my joints and gut. It's one of those simple choices that made my meals feel better almost overnight. White potatoes, the comfort food that backfires. White potatoes used to be a love language in my home, mashed with cream, fried in oil, roasted with butter, but I've had to break up with them. The reason? They spike blood sugar like no other, leading to crashes, inflammation, and long-term cardiovascular damage. For seniors, those sugar spikes put strain on the blood vessels in the legs and brain, areas already vulnerable to decline. Over time, this contributes to numbness, poor circulation, and falls. Not to mention, they lack the fiber and nutrients that other root vegetables offer. I've replaced white potatoes with sweet potatoes and carrots. They're sweeter, more colorful, and much kinder to my body. And honestly, I don't miss the crashes one bit. There was a time when no dinner in my house felt complete without white potatoes. Whether it was Sunday roast with buttery mash or crispy pan-fried slices on a weekday morning, they were more than just food. They were tradition. I used to say that mashed potatoes were my love language. And honestly, I meant it. They were comfort on a plate. But like many things we grow up loving, I had to take a second look once I hit my 60s and started noticing subtle changes in my energy, my legs, and even my blood pressure. What I didn't realize for the longest time was how fast white potatoes convert to sugar in the body. You eat a bowl of mashed potatoes, and within minutes, your blood glucose spikes. That's followed by a crash that leaves you sluggish, craving more food or worse, putting extra stress on your heart and blood vessels without even realizing it. And for seniors, those blood sugar fluctuations aren't just annoying, they're dangerous. They damage the tiny capillaries in our feet, reduce oxygen to the brain, and increase our risk of both falls and memory problems. The irony is that we think we're eating something wholesome. Potatoes come from the earth, after all, but the way they're prepared and how they act inside the body is a different story. When combined with butter, cream, and salt, which is how most of us like them, they become a triple threat. Not only are they high glycemic, but they also pack in fat and sodium, making it harder for your body to recover, especially after 65. What struck me most was how potatoes affected my circulation. I started feeling pins and needles in my toes after meals, a weird kind of numbness that I first blamed on sitting too long. But the more I ate white potatoes, the worse it got. And once I replaced them with more colorful, nutrient-dense options like sweet potatoes or roasted carrots, the tingling faded. My ankles didn't swell as much. I felt lighter on my feet. That connection was too strong to ignore. I remember reading that white potatoes are almost entirely composed of fast-burning starch. That explains the quick hit of satisfaction, followed by the inevitable crash. The trouble is, our aging metabolism doesn't handle these spikes and crashes like it used to. The body becomes slower at clearing the sugar, and over time, that builds into chronic inflammation, something that's been directly tied to heart disease, arthritis, and even Alzheimer's. Even from a nutritional standpoint, white potatoes are underwhelming. They're low in fiber, low in antioxidants, and don't offer the same protective compounds that orange and purple vegetables do. In contrast, sweet potatoes contain beta-carotene and a host of minerals that actively nourish the body. And they taste amazing with just a little olive oil and cinnamon, no need for heavy toppings. For me, the biggest shift wasn't in the food, it was in my mindset. I had to stop thinking of white potatoes as the default side dish and start seeing them for what they really were, a familiar friend who no longer had my best interest at heart. And once I made peace with that, the craving stopped. The emotional attachment faded. I still enjoy a hearty meal, but now my choices reflect where I want my health to go, not where it's been. Sweet potatoes, carrots, even turnips. They fill the same space on my plate, but they don't sabotage my energy, my balance, or my clarity. They're warming, delicious, and actually give back to my body instead of taking from it. White potatoes had their time. They were part of family memories and childhood dinners, and I'm grateful for that. But these days, I'm choosing vegetables that support the version of me that wants to keep walking, thinking clearly, and living independently. And you know what? That feels like a much better love language now. Corn, the surprise culprit behind blood sugar spikes. I never expected corn to land on my avoid list. It's in everything. Soups, sides, snacks. But once I learned that corn is a high glycemic vegetable that turns into sugar almost immediately in the bloodstream, I began rethinking how often I included it. The problem with corn, especially for older adults, is that it raises blood sugar fast and offers little in terms of nutrients. It's starchy, often processed, and stripped of its fiber, especially in forms like cornmeal, chips, and canned varieties. I noticed after corn-heavy meals, I'd feel bloated, sluggish, even foggy. So I began cutting it out gradually. Instead, I added more legumes and fibrous vegetables. My digestion improved, my energy returned, and the bloating vanished. I used to think corn was one of the safer sides on my plate, just a simple, cheerful vegetable that reminded me of cookouts and holiday dinners. But what I didn't realize is that corn isn't really a vegetable in the nutritional sense. It behaves more like a sugar-loaded starch, especially once it's been processed or canned. It might look like a plant food, but inside the body, it acts more like white bread. Once I found that out, I started paying closer attention to how I felt after eating it. At first, I didn't make the connection. I'd have a bowl of soup with corn, or a few spoonfuls of creamed corn on the side, and then wonder why I was suddenly feeling so weighed down. The energy I expected from a healthy vegetable just wasn't there. I also began noticing that my stomach felt more unsettled after those meals. Gassy, bloated, even a little crampy. That's when I started to dig deeper and found out how quickly corn turns into glucose in the bloodstream, especially in older adults whose metabolism may already be slowing down. Processed corn, like what you find in tortilla chips or cornmeal, is even worse. The fiber's stripped out, the structure's broken down, and what you're left with is a food that hits your blood sugar fast and hard. And let's not even get started on high fructose corn syrup, another corn-derived sweetener that sneaks into so many packaged foods. For those of us trying to keep our blood vessels healthy and inflammation low, this stuff is a trap. I also learned that corn tends to dominate meals without offering much back. It doesn't have the antioxidants that vibrant vegetables like beets or carrots do. It's low in meaningful fiber, unless you're eating it straight from the cob. And even then, the starch load is still something to consider. I used to love corn chowder in the winter, but every time I had it, I felt like my body had to work overtime just to digest it. So I started cutting back. Not in a dramatic overnight way, but gradually. Fewer canned corn additions to soups, no more popcorn before bed, and definitely fewer corn chips with lunch. I swapped in fiber-rich veggies like lentils, chopped carrots, and even edamame. The difference was subtle at first, but after a couple of weeks, my digestion felt smoother. I didn't have that post-meal crash anymore, and I didn't feel as puffy or sluggish in the evenings. One thing that really helped was learning how to listen to my body. I began noticing how my energy shifted based on the sides I paired with meals. Corn made me feel heavy. Beans or leafy greens made me feel balanced. That's not a coincidence. When we get older, our tolerance for high glycemic foods shrinks, and every bite either works for us or against us. Corn just wasn't working for me anymore. These days, I reserve corn for very occasional treats. Maybe a grilled corn cob in the summer, fresh, lightly seasoned, and eaten slowly. But the canned stuff, the chips, the chowders, I let them go. And I gained more than I lost. I gained clearer thinking, more stable blood sugar, and less of that hidden bloating that creeps up unnoticed. It's a trade I'd make again in a heartbeat. Canned peas, the false friend of convenience. These seem innocent. But canned peas, that's another story. They're often packed with sodium, stripped of their fresh taste, and processed to the point where most of the natural fiber and nutrients are long gone. What's left is a vegetable that spikes blood sugar without offering the antioxidants or plant proteins we need. I also noticed that after eating canned peas, I felt puffy and dehydrated, signs of sodium overload. I still eat fresh or frozen peas occasionally, but the canned version is off my list. For convenience, I now keep a stash of frozen mixed vegetables. No added salt, no hidden costs. You'd think something as small and green as a pea couldn't possibly do harm. But once I started looking into what happens inside a can, my opinion changed fast. Canned peas are heat processed at high temperatures, which sounds safe, but it destroys a good chunk of their natural nutrition. What really opened my eyes was reading about how much sodium gets packed into a tiny serving. I pulled a can from my pantry one day, and the label said 380 milligrams per half cup. That's more than a salty snack. For someone watching a blood pressure, that's a quiet grenade. And it's not just the salt, it's also the texture. They turn mushy, almost lifeless, like the vitality's been cooked out. When I eat them, it doesn't feel nourishing, it feels like filler. The fiber, which fresh peas have plenty of, is almost non-existent in canned versions. And without that fiber, your blood sugar spikes faster than you'd expect from such a tiny vegetable. That was a wake-up call for me. Peas are starchy by nature, but fresh ones come with balancing nutrients. Canned ones just don't. It's one of those cases where convenience cuts too many corners. I used to throw them into casseroles just for color, thinking I was doing something healthy, but all I was really doing was adding sodium and empty carbs. I started paying attention to how I felt after eating them. Sluggish, bloated, and oddly thirsty. Turns out that's your body reacting to sodium overload and poor hydration. And when you're older, dehydration creeps in fast. Even the low-sodium canned peas aren't much better. They're still processed, still stripped of the vibrant enzymes and antioxidants that fresh peas offer. You can taste the difference too. Fresh or frozen peas have a sweetness and snap that canned peas just can't match. That sweetness comes from natural sugars that haven't been broken down by heat and shelf life. I even tested them side by side once. The fresh ones felt alive. The canned ones tasted like metal. And no, rinsing them doesn't fix everything. Some damage is already done in the canning process. So now I keep a stash of frozen peas ready to go, nothing added. Just flash frozen goodness. They steam in minutes and make a perfect side dish without the bloat. Plus, they keep their color, flavor, and nutrients far better. I even throw a handful into my scrambled eggs, or a soup for texture and sweetness. It's amazing what a simple change like that can do for your digestion and energy. I've noticed fewer ups and downs in my blood sugar since I ditched the canned stuff, and I don't miss the heavy feeling that used to follow heavy meals. It's another one of those small daily choices that add up. When I think back to how casually I open cans without reading labels, I wince a little. But that's how we learn, right? It's never too late to look a little deeper at the foods we trust. And for me, canned peas just aren't worth the trade-off anymore. I'd rather spend 2 extra minutes steaming something that keeps me feeling clear, balanced, and nourished. As I've grown older, I've realized that my plate is more than just a meal. It's a choice about how I want to live. Strong or weak, clear-headed or cloudy, mobile or immobile. The vegetables I choose each day directly affect those outcomes. Broccoli, spinach, carrots, sweet potatoes, and beets now serve as daily allies, each offering strength, clarity, and balance. Meanwhile, eggplant, green peppers, white potatoes, corn, and canned peas, those old standbys, no longer earn a spot at my table. And I won't lie, it wasn't easy changing habits built over a lifetime, but what I got in return was energy, confidence, and a real sense of control over my health. I feel more alive now, not because I discovered some magic bullet, but because I made 100 small choices that added up to something big. If any part of this journey resonated with you, if you felt that same tug of intuition about what you're eating, then I invite you to try making one change this week. Just one. And tell me about it in the comments. Let's support each other in choosing meals that truly support our years ahead. Don't forget to like this video if it helped you. And if you want more real, honest advice like this, hit subscribe and ring the bell. Your next chapter is worth every thoughtful bite.